There are places in China that do not look like what you would expect from Earth, yet they exist entirely in reality. Sheer cliffs force people to drill through mountains or move along narrow paths carved directly into the rock face. Mineral-rich landscapes alter the surface colors, creating bands of red, yellow, and green that stretch across the terrain. High plateaus and elevated lakes form regions where access becomes difficult due to terrain and environmental conditions. These landscapes are shaped and continuously changed by geology, weather, and locations, rather than by human design. Everything seen here is real, not constructed imagery, but natural formations that exist on this planet. Huku Waterfall is the second largest waterfall in China and the largest yellow waterfall on Earth, located on the Yellow River, the second longest river flowing across the country. Unlike famous waterfalls celebrated for clear water, Huku looks like a stream of yellow lava, where the dense sediment makes the flow resemble liquid mud rather than water. Before plunging downward, the river, which is roughly as wide as 5 football fields, is suddenly compressed into a channel no wider than a narrow road. An enormous volume of water is forced into this small funnel, creating extreme pressure and a phenomenon described as 10,000 miles of the Yellow River poured into a single teapot. Seen from a distance, the rising mist forms massive grey columns that closely resemble smoke from a large fire burning in the middle of the plateau. Mount Hua is globally known for the plank walk, a wooden path fixed directly onto a sheer cliff, where a single misstep can result in fatal consequences. The most extreme segment stretches roughly 164 feet, formed by narrow wooden planks barely 1 foot wide, anchored by iron nails that have remained in place for centuries. To reach this section, climbers must ascend stone steps carved straight into the rock face, with a slope approaching 90 degrees that forces constant physical contact with the mountain. From an engineering standpoint, the route uses no modern machinery and was created in the 13th century by Taoist practitioners seeking complete isolation for spiritual cultivation. The plank walk leads to a small Taoist temple, now operating as a tea house, suspended between a vertical rock wall and a deep open void. Aegina Populus Euphratica Forest is one of only 3 remaining large-scale forests of Populus Euphratica on Earth and is strictly protected as a living desert heritage site. The area contains thousands of dead poplar trees that have remained undecomposed for centuries or even millennia due to the arid climate and dense wood composition. This tree species draws groundwater from depths of 30 to 50 feet and survives by a strange biological mechanism called the 3,000-year phenomenon. 3,000 years alive, 3,000 years standing dead, and 3,000 years unrotted. A single branch may bear 3 distinct leaf shapes, a biological trait virtually absent in modern woody plants. For just about 20 days each year from late September to mid-October, the entire forest turns bright yellow-orange, generating a powerful visual contrast against the barren desert landscape. Jiuzhaigou Valley is famous for dozens of crystal-clear lakes displaying shades from turquoise and emerald to deep blue, created by mineral content and limestone deposits beneath the water. More than 100 lakes here are not connected by rivers, but by waterfalls, with the entire flow system formed through natural limestone terraces, shaped by tectonic activity over millions of years. The colors of the lakes shift throughout the day, not because of algae or artificial lighting, but due to microscopic limestone crystals on the lake bed, refracting sunlight at different angles. The water is so transparent that fallen ancient tree trunks can be clearly seen resting on the lake floor for hundreds of years without significant decay. This unusual landscape was chosen as a default Windows wallpaper and also served as the filming location for iconic scenes in the 1986 television adaptation of Journey to the West. Tianmen Mountain is best known for Heaven Gate Cave, a natural arch that cuts directly through the mountain, formed after a cliff collapse in the year 263. In 1999, international aerobatic pilots flew aircraft straight through this opening, turning a geological feature into a rare aviation landmark. To reach the Gate of Heaven, visitors must climb exactly 999 stone steps rising directly toward the cave entrance. The road to the summit stretches about 7 miles and contains 99 sharp turns, winding along the mountainside like a white ribbon suspended in the air. Alongside a cable car, nearly 4.7 miles long, with an elevation gain of more than 4,000 feet, engineers also carved into the mountain to install the world's longest indoor escalator system running through solid rock. Harbin was once called the Paris of the East due to the deep blend of Chinese culture with Russian architectural influence from the past century. Each winter, over 10,000 workers labor non-stop around the clock for less than 3 weeks and to transform more than 7 million cubic feet of ice from the Songhua River into a massive ice city. Multi-ton ice blocks are joined without cement or glue, using only sprayed water between the seams, which freezes to create a solid structure. Inside these builds, thousands of miles of electrical wiring and LED lights are embedded to illuminate the ice from within. This is also a place where even the most advanced smartphones can fail, as batteries can drop from 100% to 0 in under 5 minutes when exposed to extreme cold. The Badain Jaran Desert is regarded as one of the world's most unusual deserts, where massive sand dunes coexist with a rare system of lakes in an extremely arid climate. Within this desert, more than 140 lakes are scattered between towering dunes, forming the phenomenon known as lakes in the desert, with colors ranging from blue and green to pink and red, due to algae and mineral content. Despite intense evaporation, these lakes never dry out thanks to a deep underground water source that remains largely unexplained, allowing both freshwater and saltwater lakes to exist side by side. The most prominent feature is the Belutu Dune, confirmed as the tallest stationary sand dune in the world, rising more than 1,640 feet from its base and standing higher than the Empire State Building. Even under constant strong winds, the dune remains stable, and the area is known for a rare geophysical phenomenon in which sliding sand produces thunder-like sounds or jet engine noises that can travel for several miles. Pingtan Island has gained recent global attention not through mass tourism, but due to a rare biological phenomenon known as blue tears. The effect is caused by marine microorganisms such as dinoflagellates or microscopic crustaceans that emit blue bioluminescent light when mechanically stimulated. When waves hit the shore, footsteps disturb shallow water, or a stone strikes the sea surface, the organisms flash instantly and fade in less than 1/10 of a second. Blue tears do not occur year-round, with the highest likelihood between April and August, strongly controlled by seawater temperature, wind direction, and tidal cycles. The phenomenon is visible only under near total darkness, as artificial light immediately overwhelms the weak bioluminescent signal. Beyond bioluminescence, the island is also known for coastal granite formations, sculpted by persistent ocean winds over millions of years. Mount Fanjing is a sacred mountain located in Guizhou Province, China, and is regarded as the Bodhi site of Maitreya Buddha in Chinese Buddhism. Its most striking feature is a main summit split, completely in two, forming separate stone pillars, rising vertically into the air. Each pillar holds an ancient temple, and the two are linked by a narrow stone bridge suspended above a deep ravine. The mountain appears as a single vertical stone column with near 90-degree cliffs, giving climbers the sensation of approaching an isolated mass floating in space. Reaching the top requires ascending 8,888 exposed stone steps along cliff edges and windswept sections, combining spiritual devotion with intense physical. Wangxian Valley, a prominent scenic area in Shangrao City, Jiangxi Province, China, has transformed from an abandoned quarry into a breathtaking tourist destination. It captivates visitors with its fairyland landscape, featuring majestic mountains, cascading waterfalls, steep cliffs, and traditional architecture. Notably, the houses are not built on flat ground, but cling directly to nearly vertical cliff faces, places where human habitation would typically be deemed impossible. From various viewpoints, these dwellings appear to float in mid-air, though in reality, only a small portion touches the mountainside. The wonder of this place stems not just from its altitude, but from humanity's daring to inhabit and build where instinct suggests is unlivable. Qinghai Lake is known as the Jade of the Plateau in China, distinguished by its immense size, extreme isolation, and a rare hybrid state between freshwater and saline lake systems. Along its edges, massive sand dunes plunge directly into deep blue water, forcing a direct collision between arid desert terrain and cold inland saltwater. In winter, the entire lake freezes solid, yet due to its unique mineral and salt content, the ice remains crystal clear rather than opaque, allowing light to penetrate beneath the surface. By July, the surrounding landscape transforms as vast fields of golden rapeseed flowers bloom, forming three sharply separated color bands of yellow fields, blue water, and distant snow-covered mountains. When the water becomes perfectly calm, a phenomenon known as the sky mirror appears, turning the lake into a 360-degree reflection of clouds and deep blue sky. Mount Mian, also known as Mianshan, is a famous mountain located in Jiangxi City in Shaanxi Province, northern China, widely recognized for its extreme terrain and cliffside architecture. Instead of building at the mountain base, humans constructed an entire architectural complex along the edge of sheer cliffs, making the mountain appear like an ancient city floating in mid-air. Several multi-story palaces weighing thousands of tons are anchored directly into rock faces that rise almost vertically at elevations exceeding 6,500 feet above sea level. To move between sections, visitors must walk along narrow wooden plank paths, only wide enough for one person, with a vertical rock wall on one side and a bottomless drop on the other. Inside some temples, Buddhist statues worshipped for centuries conceal naturally preserved, mummified monks whose intact skeletons were confirmed by X-ray scans despite the harsh, high mountain climate. The Lashan giant Buddha is the tallest stone Buddha statue in the world, carved directly into a cliff face of Mount Lingyun, at the point where three major rivers converge. Construction began in the year 713 during the Tang dynasty, led by the monk Haitong, who believed the massive figure could calm violent waters and protect passing boats. Rather than a statue placed onto a mountain, this monument is an entire mountainside carved into human form over 90 years of labor, turning natural geology into sacred architecture. A single foot can hold around 100 people, while the shoulders stretch about 80 feet wide, roughly the size of a standard basketball court, if someone could stand there. Beyond its scale, the statue is surrounded by modern accounts of eyes closing, tears appearing, or a glowing halo forming around its head during years linked to disasters and major social upheaval. Yuanyang rice terraces are a vast terraced farming system that has existed for more than 1,200 to 1,300 years, created by the Han people who carved mountain slopes into rice fields using the most basic tools. Even today, plowing and field maintenance rely entirely on human labor and water buffalo, just as their ancestors practiced more than 1,000 years ago. The Han developed an intricate canal network that channels water from primary forests at the mountaintops through villages and delivers it precisely to each individual terrace. This system has operated continuously for over a millennium, without modern technology, often described as a form of natural artificial intelligence built from mud and stone. Due to red algae growing underwater and low-angle sunlight, the terraces can display shifting colors, with adjacent plots appearing bright red, green, or deep purple, like a massive color palette. Bailong Elevator is recognized by Guinness as the tallest outdoor glass elevator in the world, rising higher than the Eiffel Tower and built directly onto a vertical sandstone cliff inside Zhangjiajie National Forest Park. The ride lasts only 1 minute and 32 seconds, yet covering the same distance on foot would require between 1 and 3 hours of continuous mountain climbing. The system operates 3 elevators simultaneously, with each cabin capable of carrying up to 50 passengers at a time. Bailong is the only vertical structure on Earth that operates electrically while cutting directly through a single solid rock wall, defying conventional construction logic. Huangguoshu Waterfall is the largest waterfall in China and East Asia and ranks among the most powerful waterfalls in the world. It is one of the few waterfalls on Earth that can be viewed from 6 different angles, including above, below both sides, the front, and by passing directly behind the falling water. Behind the water curtain lies a natural cave, stretching about 440 feet, allowing visitors to walk straight through the interior of the waterfall. Despite sitting within a high-pressure zone, the water curtain cave remains ventilated dry and maintains clear visibility along its entire length. Huangguoshu does not stand alone, but functions as the heart of a larger system composed of 18 surface waterfalls and 4 underground cascades connected across the landscape. Dongchuan Red Land is one of the largest and most distinctive red soil landscapes in the world, often ranked just behind the famous Redlands of Brazil. Until the mid-1990s, the area remained largely isolated and unknown before Chinese photographers revealed its striking scenery to a wider audience. The intense red color here is not typical farmland soil, but the result of extremely high concentrations of iron and aluminum oxidized over millions of years. Amid this vast sea of crimson terrain, a single ancient tree can sometimes be seen standing alone atop a hill, creating a powerful visual contrast. This unusual landscape has since become a regular presence in top 10 lists of China's most photogenic locations, featured by international photography platforms and magazines. Red Beach in Panjin is globally known for the seasonal color shifts of Suaeda salsa, a salt-tolerant plant that acts as a natural color filter across a vast marsh ecosystem. This is a beach without sand, where the entire surface is saline mud covered by billions of tiny plants that turn the land into a living red carpet. The color change is not a normal leaf transition, but a survival-driven chemical reaction that causes roughly 51 square miles to flare like an ocean of fire at peak intensity. Within this dark red expanse stands a single wooden house, isolated in a crimson sea where the ground is not solid earth, but a living surface no human foot can ever touch. Because the marsh is unstable and highly dangerous, people move only along wooden walkways, which from above resemble biological channels running through a massive living system. The red reaches maximum intensity for only about 20 to 30 days from September to early October, and arriving outside this window makes the phenomenon almost vanish. The Hulunbuir grassland covers an area of about 36,000 square miles, larger than the entire territory of Portugal or Hungary, placing a single grassland in China on the scale of a sovereign European country. The Morigili River, crossing the plain, is recorded by geologists as the most sinuous river in the world, as the almost perfectly flat terrain suppresses straight flow and forces the water into countless tight bends over short distances. Each year, Hulunbuir produces millions of tons of fresh grass, sufficient to sustain more than 10 million livestock at the same time across an uninterrupted open landscape. This grazing scale is so vast that Earth observation satellites can detect shifts in grassland color following the movement patterns of large herds. Historically, Hulunbuir also functioned as a natural military testing ground, where nomadic powers, such as the Khitan and Mongol empires, developed cavalry forces capable of unprecedented mobility enabled by flat terrain and abundant resources. Rime Island is one of the most notable winter destinations in northeastern China due to frequent and large-scale occurrences of rime, a form of crystalline frost. During winter, trees on the island carry no leaves and are completely covered by dense white ice crystals forming branching structures along the limbs. When air temperatures drop to around -22 degrees Fahrenheit, the river surrounding the island remains unfrozen and continuously releases vapor because of the thermal contrast between water and air. The ice flowers here do not grow from seeds, but form directly as supercooled water vapor crystallizes upon contact with tree surfaces. Here, physical phenomena such as throwing hot water into the air and watching it freeze instantly become fully real experiences. Blue Moon Valley is a scenic valley located beneath Jade Dragon Snow Mountain, where still water can produce a sharp, inverted reflection of the 18,357-foot peak without distortion from current flow. The water displays a rare electric blue tone caused by extremely high concentrations of copper ions and copper minerals eroded from underground ore veins beneath the snow mountain. The valley contains 4 distinct lakes with stable forms, including Yuye Lake, Jingtan Lake, Blue Moon Lake, and Tingtao Lake, connected by a series of low cascades. While the river itself is natural, The evenly stepped waterfall structure results from human modification combined with long-term limestone deposition. The long-haired cattle standing in the water are managed by locals for photography, and the valley has become one of China's busiest wedding photo locations, regardless of weather conditions. Mapam Yumko Lake is located in Ngari Prefecture within the Tibet Autonomous Region of China, and in the Tibetan language its name means the eternal and invincible turquoise lake. The lake holds major spiritual significance, as pilgrims believe that drinking its water or bathing in it can cleanse the sins of an entire lifetime and restore inner purity. Situated at an elevation of nearly 15,000 feet, it is one of the highest freshwater lakes accessible to humans, standing higher than the summit of Mont Blanc in Europe. The lake's water does not maintain a single color, gradually shifting from pale blue along the shoreline to turquoise and then deep blue toward the center. Geologically, the lake is confirmed as the source of four major Asian river systems, the Indus-Sutlej-Brahmaputra and Karnali rivers, supplying vast volumes of water that travel thousands of miles to sustain large populations across India, China, and Pakistan. Lop Nur was once known as the navel of the Eurasian continent, a massive salt lake in the past that has now largely dried out and entered a deadly desert state. The surface is not fine sand, but a hard, sharp salt crust resembling shattered glass, capable of puncturing off road vehicle tires and turning walking into a painful ordeal. Extreme aridity, combined with very high salt concentration, has turned the entire area into a natural freezer, preserving human remains, as if death occurred only yesterday. Amid the scorched desert, vast stretches of vivid turquoise water suddenly appear along the horizon, yet direct contact remains strictly unsafe. In summer, ground temperatures here can reach extreme levels high enough to cook food without any source of fire. Guoliang Tunnel is considered one of the 10 most dangerous roads in the world because it is carved directly along a sheer cliff face in Henan province and suspended high above a deep valley. It serves as the only connection between the isolated village of Guoliang and the outside world, replacing the ancient steep stone stairway once known as the Sky Ladder. The tunnel was built entirely by 13 local villagers beginning in 1972 and continuing for 5 years under extreme risk conditions. The tunnel officially opened to traffic on May 1st, 1977, and is narrow enough to allow only one-way vehicle movement. More than 30 cliffside windows of varying shapes open directly to the gorge, bringing in daylight and proving that this manually carved tunnel has remained stable for nearly 5 decades without reinforced concrete its support. Sapu Mountain is not a single peak, but a sacred snow mountain complex deeply embedded in local spiritual tradition. Its most distinctive feature is the main summit forming a near-perfect isosceles triangle surrounded by 12 secondary peaks in a closed structural arrangement. Locals interpret the massif as a mountain family, with a father peak as the highest, a mother peak, and multiple sons and daughters, each peak showing a distinct form clustered around a broad basin. Every year, on the 15th day of the 5th month in the Tibetan calendar, a major religious circumambulation and blessing ritual takes place around the sacred lake. With no cable cars or hotels, access requires a 2 to 3 day trek, and in 2002, American climbers Mark Newcomb and Carlos Bueller became the first confirmed ascent of the main summit. Hemu village sits isolated on a flat riverside plain encircled by mountains and belts of poplar and birch trees that seal it off from surrounding regions. At an elevation of about 3,940 feet above sea level, winter lasts nearly 5 months with deep snow cover and nighttime temperatures dropping to minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Fewer than 2,000 residents live here, forming one of the last 3 Tuva communities in China and maintaining a semi-nomadic pastoral life centered on horses, cattle, and sheep through the snow season. Traditional wooden houses are built from tightly stacked pine logs, without metal nails, using raised floors and steep roofs to prevent snow buildup and retain heat. At sunrise, smoke rising from wooden chimneys blends with fog and low clouds drifting through mountain gaps. Average snowfall exceeds 3 feet each year, enabling activities such as horseback riding on snow, handmade skiing, and forest travel using wooden snowboards. Hai Lake is one of the most treasured natural gems of Yunnan Province, China, known for its uniquely curved shape that resembles a human ear when viewed from above. The lake rests at an elevation of nearly 6,500 feet and spans over 95 square miles, almost 2.5 times the size of the entire city of Paris. According to ancient legend, the lake was formed from the crystallized tears of a waiting princess while her husband turned into the towering Kangshan mountain range with 19 peaks lining the lake shore. In the middle of the lake stands a tiny island just large enough to hold an old temple called Xiaoputuo, rising quietly from the still surface. Each winter, tens of thousands of white seagulls migrate from the frozen lands of Siberia to this lake, covering the waters like a moving canvas. Encircling the lake is a 75-mile scenic path considered one of the most beautiful lakeside cycling and walking routes in China. Ginkgo Village is known as the most beautiful ancient ginkgo settlement in the world, a time oasis where more than 1,200 old ginkgo trees still stand apart from modern life. Within an area of less than 1.2 square miles, over 1,000 trees range in age from about 300 to 1,500 years, forming a rare ancient botanical cluster. In autumn, the leaves fall so heavily that roads and rooftops disappear under a bright golden blanket that looks almost like real gilding. In 2011, renowned director Peter Chan selected the Ginkgo villages here as the primary filming location for his martial arts fantasy movie, Dragon. Preliminary studies suggest that the space surrounding ancient ginkgo trees contains a unique biological frequency that may help reduce stress and enhance the human immune system. Mount Imei is one of the 4 sacred Buddhist mountains of China, where extreme terrain, stratified climate, and religious heritage intersect across more than 2,000 years. The statue of Samantabhadra here stands about 157 feet tall, weighs roughly 728 tons and is gilded with real gold, serving as a sacred landmark above the clouds. At the highest elevations, sunlight refracts to create a rare phenomenon known as the Buddha halo, where a human silhouette appears on cloud layers surrounded by a perfect circular aura. The cloud sea of Mount Eme forms a shallow ocean of vapor that conceals the landscape below and at times becomes cascading cloud falls, dropping thousands of feet into the valleys. Rainforest conditions dominate the foothills, while freezing temperatures and snow appear near the summit, supporting more than 3,000 plant species, representing roughly 1/10 of China's total botanical diversity. In China, there are homes built in places where it seems almost impossible for people to live. Some cling to cliffs, some hide inside caves, and some stand alone between endless snow and desert. There are temples hanging high among the mountains. There are tiny tents standing in the middle of cold, empty winds. There are also remote villages where life feels almost cut off from the rest of the world. But what makes these places so fascinating is why these homes were built in such harsh and isolated landscapes. Today, we explore China's loneliest homes, the most isolated homes hidden among China's most extreme landscapes. Suspended on a vertical cliff hundreds of meters above the ground, the Xinyuzhai convenience store is one of the most isolated stores in China. The entire structure is a wooden box of about 2 square meters attached to the cliff, hanging in open air and completely separated from ordinary access routes. Without roads or direct transportation links, the operator must use a cable system to deliver supplies and maintain daily operations. Most visitors are adventurers, passing through while completing the mountain climbing route connected to the site. Surrounding the store are only cliffs, deep drops, and strong winds sweeping across the mountainside. The Eye of Jingxi is a clear example in China of the collision between private property rights and the expansion of modern infrastructure. The 2-story brick house was not demolished because the owners refused compensation and did not agree to relocate, forcing National Highway G206 to split around the structure. Two asphalt lanes curve around the house, forming the shape of a giant eye, with the building positioned exactly at the pupil. Although it stands in the middle of a major road, the structure has no legal turn-off, stopping point, or direct vehicle access. As traffic continued to surround it, the life of the last remaining occupants gradually drained away from the site. Broken windows, weeds covering the concrete yard, and the house became a silent architectural shell within moving infrastructure. Shentu Temple hangs across an elevation difference of more than 800 meters, isolated within the steep mountain terrain of Guizhou. This small structure stands in Muhuang town, separated from residential areas and not connected to any surrounding village cluster. High mountains and deep ravines surround it on all sides, leaving the temple with only a small foothold on the rocky summit. Although it is called Little Fanjing Mountain, the site does not have the dense layout of a large complex and instead exists as a single ancient temple. The interior mainly serves worship and quiet retreat, with almost no signs of ordinary family life. Among clouds, mountains, and enclosed terrain, Shentu Temple remains physically detached, like a small refuge halfway up the sky. Chagan Lake hides the last winter fishing tribe, where people have preserved a manual survival method for more than 1,000 years. Covering about 500 square kilometers, the entire lake turns into a transparent and silent ice plain during winter. When the winter fishing festival begins, fishermen use only horsepower, large nets, and manual techniques to pull the hidden catch from beneath the ice. This patience once created a Guinness World Record with more than 168,000 kilograms of fish in a single net haul. Along the lake shore, small villages sink under thick snow, where winter life contracts around ice, horses, and net preparation. In the frozen cold, almost all surface movement disappears, leaving only a slow and silent rhythm of survival. Jongdong Cave Village is a rare natural settlement where people still maintain a permanent community life inside a giant cave. Since the 1950s, the local Miao people moved into the cave to avoid disturbances from the outside world and chose a more secluded way of life. About 100 residents and their livestock share a single enclosed space without being divided by outdoor streets or separate neighborhoods like a traditional village. The bamboo and wooden houses here do not require artificial roofs because the enormous limestone cave ceiling functions as a natural dome that shields the settlement from the weather. The boundary between the outside world and the community is a natural stone arch, more than 100 meters wide and dozens of meters high, opening like the mouth of a mountain. People here withdraw into a self-contained ecosystem, maintaining a self-sufficient way of life that has remained largely unchanged within the cave. Step into an extraordinary orbit of isolation where people abandon the concepts of neighborhoods and sidewalks to live in harmony with the endless silence of the Gobi Desert. The Mongolian yurt rejects sharp corners with its circular design, allowing it to adapt to strong winds, while its wooden, felt, and leather structure rests lightly on the ground without a permanent foundation. Around it stretches a vast plain of gravel and dry sand reaching the horizon, uninterrupted by mountains, forests, or artificial structures. When nomadic families move on, the dwelling can be completely dismantled without leaving ruins or concrete traces on the landscape. Even in the age of megacities, these isolated shelters continue to preserve a separated nomadic way of life that has endured for thousands of years. Guanyin Pavilion is known as the first pavilion on the 10,000 Li Yangtze because of its unusual foundation in the middle of the longest river in Asia. The entire pavilion is built precisely on Longpan Rock, a solitary submerged reef rising from the Yangtze River and completely separated from both mainland banks. This structure of brick, tile, and stone weighs hundreds of tons and uses its own mass to anchor itself firmly to the reef against the year-round current. During the dry season, the rugged rock is clearly exposed and serves as the direct base supporting the building. When the rainy season raises the water level, the base and ground floor of the pavilion quietly sink beneath the vast water surface. To this day, no bridge connects the structure to land, preserving its physical isolation in the middle of the Yangtze River. Laojian Mountain is a Taoist architectural masterpiece that reaches one of the highest levels of physical isolation in China, marking the final boundary before merging into the sky. The entire complex stands at an elevation of about 2,200 meters, creating the image of golden temples suspended above an ocean of clouds covering the surrounding peaks. Although regarded as a single complex, its three main structures are separated across three individual rock pinnacles. To reach this site, visitors must cross a long cable car route over steep cliffs before climbing thousands of stone steps leading to the summit. During winter, heavy snow blankets the entire landscape, covering the rugged contours of the rocks and turning the mountain into a vast white expanse. It is also considered a retreat associated with the philosophy of Laozi, where people withdraw from ordinary life to maintain quiet contemplation among clouds and mountains. Maijishan grottos belong to the four great grottos of China and stand out for the number and refined condition of their clay sculptures. The entire complex is carved into a purplish-red sandstone peak rising 142 meters, isolated within Xiaolongshan Forest. From a distance, the mountain is hollowed by hundreds of dark cavities, making its surface look like a giant, fossilized honeycomb with 194 stone chambers. Inside these chambers, many clay statues still preserve colorful pigment layers on their surfaces, showing the rare survival of ancient sculptural techniques. The only circulation system is a network of narrow planks fastened directly into the vertical cliff, suspended in open air. In winter, thick snow covers the mountain and surrounding forest, making the dark grottos stand out more sharply against the cold sandstone surface. Jiading village stands isolated on a mountain peak in Guizhou, at an elevation of about 1,200 meters, separated from the urban rhythm below. Its high position means that Jiaxi village on the opposite side can be seen nearby, yet still takes about an hour to reach. Around the small settlement, wide fields have gradually been abandoned as young people leave and farming activity declines. Today, only a few elderly Shui people remain in the old houses, using water seeping from the mountaintop to sustain daily life. Near the cliff edge, the Fantianyin rock has a hollow base detached from the ground, adding another isolated feature to the rocky terrain. Originally founded as a refuge from ancient warfare, Jiading now remains as a sparse mountain village within the deep wilderness. Taklamakan Desert is the second largest shifting sand desert in the world, known as the Sea of Death, because much of its surface is ruled by sand and wind. About 85% of its area is moving sand, where the terrain can change constantly and threaten to swallow any route crossing it. To resist this separation, people built the 522-kilometer Tarim Desert Highway across the desert. Along the route, about 20 million trees were planted as a sand-blocking belt, about 70 meters wide on both sides of the road. Every 4 kilometers, a pumping station appears, forming a network of 109 operating points in the desert. The people living here maintain the pumping system and the greenbelt, acting as a biological link that keeps the road from being buried by sand. Gulu village in Sichuan creates a striking image as it stands alone on the cliff of a mountain more than 1,400 meters high, making it one of the most isolated settlements in China. From a distance, the small village appears among a sea of clouds, surrounded by vertical cliffs and the deep Dadu River Canyon with a rushing river far below. Daily life takes place close to the cliff edge, where artificial barriers are almost absent, and the free fall can reach about 1,000 meters. Residents sustain themselves through small fields attached to the mountain slopes and water seeping from cracks in the rock. For centuries, the fractured terrain cut off ordinary transportation routes, forcing people to walk along cliffside paths to connect with the world below. Would you dare live in a place where stepping outside your door means facing a massive abyss directly beneath your feet? Niking Village resembles a giant solitary raft floating on the water whenever the flood season returns. The village is rooted in a barren land area of less than 200 mu, held within Inner Juhu, where the calm water surrounds it like a large mirror. During the dry season, the three residential clusters of Miaozui, Yaoli, and Dazong are connected across a strip of exposed land. When the rainy season arrives, the rising water splits this space apart, turning one village into three isolated islands within the lake. Residents live in compressed density on a small piece of land, with almost no setback or space for expansion. This isolation becomes a fixed boundary, forcing human life to remain tied to the rising and falling cycle of the water. Hidden in a deep valley surrounded by the mountains of Guizhou, one family still chooses an almost completely isolated way of life. After their former neighbors and eldest son moved to town, the 83-year-old woman and her son remained in this remote home. The entrance is a rough footpath covered with weeds, leading to a half-wooden and half-stone house that has stood for more than 50 years. Around it, former farmland has gradually been abandoned, leaving only a small yard where corn and herbs dry in a slower rhythm of life. Their isolation is clear because the two of them must walk more than 1 hour through mountain paths to reach the rural market held once every 5 days. For them, this separation is not an obstacle, but a way to maintain a quiet rhythm of life within nature. Hemu village lies deep within the core of Kanas Nature Reserve, like one of the last artificial lights among the forests and mountains of northern Xinjiang. From above, small wooden houses are scattered across the valley floor, surrounded by slopes covered with birch trees and conifer forests. Its position near the border junction of Russia, Kazakhstan, and Mongolia places the village in one of the highest latitude regions with one of the longest winters in China. When snow covers the area, the entire landscape loses almost all color, leaving only the cold, white ground, contrasting with dark gray tree trunks and muted wooden roofs. This isolation allows Hemu to preserve a rhythm of life separated from the large cities outside. It is also one of the last places where the Tuva people remain, maintaining their own living system and cultural identity within the Kanas Valley. Yipianwa Zen Temple is a sanctuary that rejects an artificial roof, using a massive natural rock slab to isolate itself from the outside world. True to its name, meaning one tile, the entire complex is placed beneath a huge rock overhang, turning the lithosphere itself into a protective roof for the temple. At the center stands a bronze palace weighing 150 tons, supported by 2 rock slabs and remaining suspended without direct contact with the ground. Hidden behind the cliff, the structure reveals its bright metallic surface only when sunlight passes through narrow cracks during a few brief moments each day. The living and meditation spaces are arranged around natural cavities already formed within the mountain. When fog covers the area, the boundary between the structure and the sky becomes almost impossible to distinguish. Muli Hong village is considered the highest ancient village in the Huangshan mountain system, emerging from a sea of clouds like a ship suspended on the mountainside. The entire village is compressed into a semicircular strip, using the mountain ridge as its only foundation and leaving almost no room to expand sideways. The houses grow directly from jagged rock ledges, where the roof of one home can align with the doorway platform of another along the same steep vertical axis. At an elevation of nearly 1,000 meters, the village spends more than 100 days each year covered in fog. To reach it, all movement must pass through about 800 stone steps carved into the mountain slope. The harsh terrain has led many young people to leave, leaving elderly residents to remain on the mountain top. Mount Fanjing is so isolated that UNESCO recognized it for its intact landform structure, almost beyond the reach of heavy machinery. At the summit, Red Cloud's golden peak rises into the sky like a stone pillar, split from top to bottom by a deep fissure. This cut creates two sharp peaks standing side by side in mid-air, connected by a thin stone arch bridge at nearly 2,500 meters. To reach the core of the stone pillar, people must cross a maze of more than 8,000 steps that drains physical strength. Higher up, the route forces climbers to hold iron chains between a vertical cliff face and a bottomless abyss. Despite the danger, millions of people still come to Mount Fanjing each year to pray for peace among the sea of clouds. Jindeng Temple is one of the most isolated Buddhist cave complexes in China, suspended on a cliff at an elevation of about 1,700 meters. The cave complex leans against a vertical mountain wall, where fog often covers the area for months and makes the space even more enclosed. Inside Shuidi Hall, a natural spring floods the feet of the statues, the pathways, and the stone platforms, forming a rock pool within the cave. More than 500 statues are carved directly into the dark cave walls, standing in a damp environment with water seepage throughout the year. Stone paths, stepping platforms, and a small bridge were created so people could move across the flooded floor. Formed from the need for retreat and religious practice, Jindeng Temple remains an isolated worship space on Linlu Mountain. Haotawan may be the answer to the question of what would happen if humans suddenly disappeared. In the 1990s, more than 3,000 residents quietly left the village on Shengshan Island to seek a more convenient life on the mainland. The abandoned brick and concrete houses remained in the valley, allowing vines to slowly cover them from foundation to roof. Over time, the entire artificial mass turned into soft green layers, where nature reclaimed each wall. The geography of Haotawan almost removes wheeled vehicles, because no paved road leads deep into the core of the valley. Although it has become famous, its remote position in the Shengsi archipelago and the rotating ferry routes still preserve a layer of silence separated from the crowds. Ganlu Rock Temple breaks conventional building rules and is regarded as an original, suspended architectural masterpiece of southern China. The entire complex has no broad foundation spread across the ground, instead concentrating much of its weight onto a single wooden pillar fixed to the bottom of the ravine. The structure also uses no roof tiles because the huge rock cave above serves as a natural canopy against storms and harsh sunlight. Confined within narrow terrain, the architecture bends with the cliff and gradually opens its living space outward as it rises. Around it lies the exposed red Danxia sandstone terrain within the core of Taining Global Geopark. To reach this place, people must follow mountain paths and stone steps through a deep gorge before seeing the temple resting silently beneath the force of the massive rock. Los Plateau Yaodong is the largest inhabited cave-dwelling complex in the world, where tens of millions of people still live inside chambers carved deep into the Les Plateau. From above, the settlements are almost invisible because the homes are hidden in hillsides or sunk beneath the ground, revealing only entrances and small courtyards. This geological mass was created from fine sediment dust carried by winds from the Gobi Desert over millions of years, forming soil that is soft enough to dig, yet stable enough for habitation. Residents live, rest, and store food underground, where temperatures remain relatively stable through both summer and winter. The surrounding landscape is covered by the dry yellow tone of loess and has very little dense vegetation. When abandoned, the caves are slowly eroded by wind and water, then merge back into the original earth mass. Atuli village is known worldwide as Cliff Village, a settlement perched on a rock platform about 1,400 meters high in Sichuan, China. For centuries, this community maintained daily life, livestock raising, and habitation on a surface almost completely separated from the world below the mountain. Before steel ladders were installed, residents had to climb steep rope ladders and vine roots along the cliff, with an abyss of about 800 meters beneath them. Everything from children and food supplies to pigs and cattle once moved up and down through this dangerous route. After most residents were relocated to the foot of the mountain, the rammed earth houses were left behind near the cliff edge. These hollow shells still stand above the valley as traces of a village that once lived beyond ordinary mechanical limits. Hanging Temple is the oldest suspended wooden structure in China, where it has existed for more than 1,500 years on a vertical cliff face. All 40 rooms are fitted into a natural, recessed groove, forming a thin wooden complex attached along the 90-degree slope of Jinlong Canyon. The long wooden pillars below are not the main load-bearing parts, because the real weight is held by oak beams driven deep into rock cavities. This anchoring method allows the structure to remain stable without a traditional foundation connected to the ground. Inside, small enclosed rooms are linked by narrow wooden planks and corridors projecting into open space. This environment separates daily life from the ground, preserving privacy and silence halfway up the cliff. Hulunbuir Blizzard Nomadic Tent is a survival capsule in conditions that can fall to -40 degrees Celsius, where people use the surrounding snow as a protective layer to retain heat. The tent is designed to let snow accumulate on its felt covering, where it freezes into a natural insulation layer that traps warmth inside. Outside, cold winds sweep across thousands of square kilometers of plain, driving snow into continuous white bands and erasing almost every trace on the ground. In this landscape, flattened by ice and frost, the Mongolian tent becomes the only structure rising vertically, existing as an isolated station without power lines, water pipelines, or telecommunications infrastructure. When winter ends, the tent is dismantled and moved away, while melting snow carries off every visible sign that it was ever there. Qiangtang Nomad Stone Hut lies hidden within a strictly protected high plateau, where wildlife dominates and humans exist only as small points of settlement. These houses are built by hand from rough stones gathered on the grassland, without cement or steel beams, forming rare artificial stone blocks in the frozen desert. In winter, the main heat source is dried yak dung, which burns slowly and provides steady warmth instead of a large flame. Around them stretches the Changtang Plain, one of the highest and most open landscapes on Earth. To resist snowstorms and strong winds, each hut has only a very low entrance and a small smoke hole in the roof. People here tie their life cycle to yaks and antelopes, passing the long winter inside a cold stone shell. Yungang Grottos is a brutal sandstone megastructure where humans hollowed out Wuzhou Mountain to imprison tens of thousands of stone statues in darkness for millennia. Since the 5th century, ancient workers carved through the original geological structure, creating a giant hollow honeycomb inside the cliff. From a distance, the site appears to be nothing more than a barren strip of rock enduring the violent assault of Gobi Desert sandstorms across the millennia. This complex contains 252 caves of different sizes, connected underground and carved directly into the sandstone layer. Inside that ruined outer shell is a maze holding 51,000 statues confined within enclosed rock chambers. Many giant statues also have hollowed eye sockets, inlaid with glossy black glass, making their gaze appear cold inside the darkness. Mount Mian is a spiritual fortress suspended in mid-air, where the real mummified remains of ancient monks are hidden inside Buddha statues. The entire area is a giant limestone mass fractured into vertical cliffs. Dozens of palace and temple complexes capable of holding thousands of people are fixed onto 90-degree rock faces or pushed deep into caves hanging above the abyss. The most haunting feature is the 15 statues covered in fired clay and gold leaf, but inside them are the real flesh and bones of monks who starved themselves to death. To move between the structures, people must follow wooden plank corridors less than 1 meter wide, fixed to the mountainside at a height of 300 meters. Many sections are only wooden steps suspended by iron chains, forcing people to climb across open gaps in mid-air. Mati Temple Grottos is one of the largest and most complex vertically carved Buddhist cave structures in China, resembling a hollow stone skyscraper inside a cliff. Instead of building an outdoor tower, ancient workers cut deep into the sandstone, preserved a massive central stone pillar, and carved it into a multi-level tower. The passages connecting the caves are narrow, dark, and steep stone tubes, forcing people to crouch or crawl through them like insects trapped inside a nest. Many sections of this network almost completely reject natural light, making orientation depend on spatial memory. Behind the complex rise, the permanently snow-covered Kailian Mountains, creating a harsh transition zone between cold mountains and dry red sandstone. Under the northwest sunset, sharp geological fractures on the cliff are exposed like a landform with no safe retreat. Wangxian Valley is one of the world's most extraordinary villages, where there is almost no flat ground, and every house seems to grow directly from a vertical cliff. Hundreds of wooden houses are anchored to steep mountainsides, suspended above a deep abyss. To keep these structures standing, builders had to design support systems capable of resisting strong winds, high humidity, and terrain that is nearly vertical. The only transportation network consists of narrow wooden bridges and walkways fixed along the cliff edge, linking clusters of hanging houses. Visitors explore the valley by following these paths beside roaring waterfalls, where wet fog often makes the surface dangerously slippery. At night, thousands of lanterns illuminate the layered houses at a height of 110 meters, transforming the mountainside into a remarkably mysterious scene. Tianshan Mountain is one of the most rugged landforms in Liaoning, where geological activity concentrated an exceptionally high density of fault lines within a limited area. Violent tectonic forces fractured the landscape into exactly 999 sharp granite towers rising like a gigantic field of stone spikes. Within this maze of rock, dozens of Taoist and Buddhist temples are squeezed into narrow fissures between sheer cliff walls. Ancient pine trees cannot rely on soil for survival, and instead drive their roots deep into cracks within the granite. Temperature differences between the peaks and valleys frequently generate dense seas of clouds that engulf the landscape. To reach the stone pinnacles, visitors must climb steps carved directly into the mountain spine and squeeze through the narrowest sections of the one-line sky fissures. Panlong Ancient Road has more than 600 curves, making it one of the paved roads with the highest density of turns in the world. From above, it does not look like a normal road, but like a giant black python, tightly coiled on the roof of the world. The dark asphalt contrasts sharply with the bare grey and yellow mountains of the Pamir Plateau, creating a surface that looks like a lifeless planet. The road is located in Tashkurgan County, near a difficult border region where China meets Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Pakistan, and it is surrounded by the snow-covered peaks of the Kunlun Mountains. Its highest point reaches about 13,780 feet, but it was originally built only to help a few dozen nomadic families move sheep across the mountains more easily. There are almost no gas stations or rest stops along the route, so once a vehicle enters this chain of curves, it can only keep moving forward until it fully exits the road. China has mountains so strange that after just one look, you may ask yourself, does this place really exist on Earth? They are not just high, but so unusual that they seem to belong to another world. Their red cliffs rise like giant walls, making the land look as if it has been torn open. Above the sea of clouds, sharp peaks, steep stone steps, and ancient temples appear in places where building anything seems almost impossible. In some places, roads cut straight through the mountainside, while in others, temples cling to the cliffs as if floating in the air. This is a journey through the strangest mountains in China, where the deeper you go, the more nature feels like a world that should not be real. Dangxia Mountain is where red sandstone cliffs turn Guangdong's mountain terrain into a landform colored from within. Covering nearly 300 square kilometers, it is the largest and most dramatic red sandstone landscape in the province. The deep red color comes from iron oxidation hidden inside ancient rock layers, not from a surface coating. Because of this mineral composition, the cliffs can change color according to humidity and the angle of sunlight. The area also contains two giant sandstone formations shaped very closely like human reproductive organs. Many cliffs that look massive from afar are actually thin stone slabs left after erosion, with long, curving rock bands like giant spines wrapping around the rugged terrain. Huangshan is known as one of the most majestic mountains under heaven, located in Anhui Province, China. It is a geological masterpiece filled with sharp granite pinnacles, rising among ancient twisted pine trees, growing directly from bare rock cracks. Seas of clouds frequently surge around the peaks, hiding the depths below and making the pathways appear suspended in open space. To reach this landscape, people carved more than 60,000 stone steps directly into the vertical cliffs. On many steep sections, iron chains anchored into the rock provide the only handhold, forcing climbers to press against the cliff face and move almost on all fours. On both sides of the route, there is almost no buffer ground, only a direct drop into a sea of clouds with no visible bottom. Wudang Mountain is located in Hubei Province and is famous as the sacred center of Taoism, as well as the birthplace of Tai Chi. At its highest point stands the Golden Pavilion, a structure cast entirely from gilded bronze and exposed to constant mountain storms. Whenever lightning strikes the roof directly, fireballs can appear around the building, yet the pavilion remains intact and continues to shine. The most famous feature is Longtu Incense, a dragon-shaped rock outcrop extending directly above a deep abyss. For centuries, pilgrims have crawled along this narrow stone ridge to burn incense and offer prayers. Beneath them lies an empty drop with no visible bottom, where every movement across the cold rock becomes a test of courage and height. Yandang Mountain is the remnant of a supervolcano that collapsed 120 million years ago, leaving flat vertical rock faces that look as if they were cut straight across by a giant blade. Its volcanic geology, makes the rock surfaces smooth, nearly 90 degrees steep, and almost without natural ledges for support. Between the massive cliffs, narrow cracks form wind corridors that are constantly covered in fog. Along the climbing route, walkers face abysses hundreds of meters below their feet while stepping on small, U-shaped iron bars drilled directly into the rock face. To connect one peak to another, the only infrastructure is narrow cable, stayed bridges or glass bridges crossing the fractures. Especially, the site features performances where people suspend themselves and ride bicycles across a single cable stretched between two mountain peaks, an intangible cultural heritage suspended hundreds of meters above the ground. Tianzhu Mountain is a strange meeting point between fairyland-like scenery and dramatic rock terrain hidden among floating seas of clouds. True to its name, meaning sky pillar, the main peak is a massive monolithic granite block, sharp and rising into the sky like a stone sword. Instead of gentle rolling hills, the landscape is filled with isolated vertical rock pinnacles and giant boulders resting in unbelievable balance. The route to the summit is a chain of narrow, steep stone steps carved tightly into the hard cliff face. From the valley below, sudden gusts strike upward against the slippery rock surface, constantly testing the balance of walkers. This grand but psychologically demanding terrain helps Tianzhu Mountain preserve its wild and silent character. Located in Guizhou Province, Mount Fanjing is described as a place where people must spend all their courage to reach the gate of heaven. At the summit, the Red Cloud's golden summit rises into the sky like a rock pillar split from top to bottom by a deep fissure. This split creates two parallel stone pinnacles at nearly 2,500 meters, connected by a narrow arched stone bridge suspended in open space. To reach the summit, visitors must hold iron chains and climb thousands of steep stone steps. The path follows the boundary between a vertical cliff on one side and a bottomless abyss on the other, surrounded by screaming mountain winds and a terrifying empty void. In such dangerous terrain, one question remains. How did ancient builders carry heavy materials up here to build the two temples that still stand today? Jeju Mountain is defined by a cliffside monorail fixed directly into the vertical sandstone terrain above a fog-covered gorge. This 11.8-kilometer route has more than one-third of its track running along the cliff, carrying cabins between 850 and 1,150 meters above the ground. One side of the cabin nearly presses against the cold rock surface, while the other side opens directly over the deep void of the valley. The mountain has almost no gentle slopes, only split vertical cliffs, enclosing the swirling water at the bottom of the gorge. Before reaching the train, visitors also pass through a steep cable car system pulled close to the cliff face. The Hanging Monastery is a wooden temple that has remained suspended on a cliff edge for 1,500 years, challenging ordinary ideas about gravity. The structure is anchored into natural rock recesses of Mount Heng, where 40 wooden chambers hang above a sloping cliff at a height of about 75 meters. The exterior support columns appear as thin as chopsticks, but the main load-bearing system relies on wooden beams driven deep into the rock face. The corridors connecting the buildings are less than 1 meter wide and produce creaking sounds beneath each step. Low and narrow railings leave the open drop constantly present beside visitors. To protect this fragile structure, the number of people allowed on the suspended walkways is strictly controlled. Mount Hua is famous as one of the most dangerous mountains in the world, where the walking route is forced directly onto steep cliff faces. The harshness of this mountain comes from hand-carved paths cut into the rock wall and plank sections suspended beside the abyss. At more than 2,000 meters, many sections are only thin wooden planks about 30 centimeters wide, fixed directly into the nearly vertical granite wall. Outside the path, there is no solid floor or railing protecting walkers from the empty drop. Mountain winds constantly scream through the rock gaps, forcing climbers to press against the cold cliff and grip iron chains with every step. On the summits, the standing space is extremely limited and ends abruptly at the sharp cliff edge. Laojian Mountain is a fairyland-like place that rejects every known safety boundary and is known as one of the most sacred Taoist sites. At more than 2,200 meters, 3 golden palaces do not stand on flat plains, but rest precariously on 3 sharp marble peaks, rising straight into the sky. At this elevation, surging cloud waterfalls often swallow the cliff edge corridors, blurring the thin boundary of the walkway. To reach the summit, people must cross a network of walkways stretching for dozens of kilometers, fixed tightly to the outer side of the steep limestone cliffs. In winter, Laojian Mountain reaches its most extreme beauty, but also becomes its harshest. When ice and snow cover the steep stairs and cliffside paths, every step requires full effort to maintain balance. Minju Mountain begins with 12 main peaks, arranged in a large arc around the deep gorge below. Within this terrain, many slopes are cut flat, like giant stone faces, exposing smooth vertical cliffs behind dense fog. The deep green bamboo forests and hanging vegetation only reach the fracture edge before stopping at the 90-degree cliff. Here, the Qingyun Plank Road clings directly to the mountainside at an altitude of 1,700 meters. This route stretches for thousands of meters and is fixed with steel bolts and concrete foundations drilled straight into the cliff. Every step on the narrow path places walkers between the cold rock wall and the fog-covered void below. Mount Taiyun redefines the limit of a structure by placing an ancient temple on a sharp rock peak piercing through the clouds at 1,585 meters. The entire building clings to a ledge smaller than 6 square meters, with three sides dropping straight into 90-degree fractured cliffs. With no wide foundation or safe setback, the temple survives by gripping the cliff edge for more than 500 years. Despite violent winds and earthquakes, this small structure has never been thrown from its position suspended between earth and sky. Every year, tens of thousands of people still climb to this place to light incense on that fragile boundary. In winter, snow and ice cover the sandstone cliffs and turn the ascent into a slippery surface. Wangxian Valley completely breaks the idea that houses can only be built on flat ground. Here, a 90-degree granite cliff, rising more than 110 meters above the valley floor, becomes a giant wall used to hang an entire town in mid-air. Ancient houses, suspension bridges, and walkways are all fixed directly into the vertical cliff surface. To explore the valley, visitors must walk on wooden plank paths hugging the cliff edge directly above the roaring waterfalls below their feet. The enclosed deep gorge traps fog and water vapor from the waterfalls, keeping the wooden and stone surfaces wet and slippery. At night, thousands of lanterns light up across the layered houses, turning the mountainside into a hanging picture in the darkness. The Jinshan Hanging Temple does not cling to the ground, but hides deep inside a hollow cave in a red Danxia sandstone cliff. This four-story temple is pressed into the cave like an architectural mass attached to a fracture of the mountain. In front of the structure, the gorge opens straight downward, turning every wooden corridor into a suspended boundary between rock and empty space. The most haunting detail is the single wooden trunk braced against the cliff, placing the entire sense of balance on one fragile support. As you cross the only plank path, every vibration of the wooden floor makes the depth ahead feel clearer. If this walkway were cut off, people would be trapped between the cliff and the gorge with no way to retreat. Mount Taibai does not need winter to be covered in snow, because even in mid-June, its summit remains white, while the mountain base is still trapped in summer heat. Known as the June Snow Mountain, it creates an extreme weather boundary where intense summer conditions and sub-zero snowstorms can be only minutes apart. At roughly 3,500 meters, the ancient glacial lakes are surrounded by boulders and ice, yet their waters remain crystal clear throughout the year. As the highest point of the Qinling Range, Mount Taibai forms the watershed boundary that separates the basins of two of China's largest rivers. Across its slopes, vegetation changes noticeably with every gain in elevation, creating a layered biological fortress. When dense fog and screaming winds engulf the mountain, the trail nearly disappears as visibility shrinks to only a few meters. Drak sits nearly 5,000 meters above sea level, a place where people willingly leave behind the security of solid ground. It is one of the highest networks of monasteries and meditation caves in the world, hidden within the thin air of the Tibetan Plateau. Instead of spreading across level terrain, its shrines and caves are embedded into natural fractures along towering cliff faces. Some structures project outward above the edge of the abyss, while others disappear deep into cold and shadowy rock chambers. Against the grey stone walls, small white and blood-red buildings stand out as fragile marks suspended above vast empty space. With no cable cars or mechanical assistance, the only way to reach the site is by pushing through slippery mountain trails until nearly every reserve of strength has been exhausted. Shuangta Mountain is where two giant sandstone pillars rise straight from the valley, lifting two ancient brick towers to a position almost separated from the ground. On top of these vertical stone columns, the two structures more than 1,000 years old still remain, even though the cliffs below are smooth and almost without natural footholds. What makes this site a mystery is the absence of clear traces of stairs, trails, or any ancient access route leading to the summit. After centuries of exposure to wind and rain, at that isolated height, the southern tower is now severely damaged. Although it stands near residential areas, the site still feels like a structure hanging beyond human reach. The remaining question is how ancient people carried building materials to those almost unreachable stone summits. Jurong Peak is the highest point among the 72 peaks of Mount Heng, rising at roughly 1,300 meters. From this position, a 360-degree view opens directly over the fractured cliff network beneath your feet. The summit's surface exposes granite eroded by storms over millions of years, leaving deep cracks running through the rock mass. To reach the highest point, visitors must follow long stone steps, curving along the mountainside through fog and strong wind. The higher the route climbs, the heavier each step becomes because of the exposed stone surface and the open void beside it. The final point is Jurong Temple, a small structure attached to the edge of the highest rock outcrop among the clouds. Mount Imei does not begin with gentle mountain slopes, but with cliffs that are abruptly cut into the landscape at elevations above 3,000 meters. The area around the Golden Summit is often covered by thick clouds, making it resemble an island suspended above the land, while concealing the true depth of the fractured cliffs below. At the highest point, a giant golden statue rises through the clouds and serves as the most recognizable landmark on the mountain. To reach this place, visitors must climb more than 60,000 stone steps attached to the mountainside, one of the longest and most physically demanding artificial climbing routes in the world. During winter, the surrounding forest turns white, while the exposed stairways disappear beneath layers of freezing snow. These conditions are part of what makes Mount Imei a dual heritage site, where dramatic geology and Buddhist architecture exist together on the cliff faces. Mount Juhua rises on 99 giant stone lotus peaks, where ancient temples cling unevenly to almost vertical cliff faces. The terrain here is split by narrow ridges, steep stone steps, and paths that trace high mountain slopes through thick clouds. To reach this sacred place, pilgrims must cross tens of thousands of ancient stone steps, with slopes ranging from 70 to 80 degrees. Many sections hang within a dense sea of clouds, making each step feel like crawling along the edge of open space. The boundary between peaceful temples and fog-covered ravines is sometimes only one unstable step apart. At the highest point, Tiantai Temple grips a narrow rock outcrop, projecting into the air, with its front facing directly toward the deep abyss below. Wulanhada Volcano Geopark is a Mars base camp on Earth, where a rare young volcanic complex lies exposed and isolated in the vast grassland. From above, the black volcanic craters open deep, like giant hollow pits carved into the ground. The slopes are made of light and porous pumice and volcanic scoria, standing in an open plain with no barriers, so they are often hit by strong gusts of wind. Many volcanoes were heavily mined before being protected, leaving huge cuts into the mountain cores and exposing the inner geological structure. Intact volcanic cones such as Volcano Number 5 still preserve deep funnel-shaped craters like natural basins. Against the dark scoria ground, visitors in pure white astronaut suits make each unsteady step look like a scene from another planet. Meiji Mountain rises alone from a green forest, completely separated from the surrounding gentle mountain ranges. On its smooth cliff face, nearly 200 caves of different sizes are carved deep into the rock, forming honeycomb-like openings attached to the vertical mountainside. This exposed terrain still preserves a refined collection of ancient clay statues, with painted layers surviving for more than 1,600 years. To move around the cliff, visitors must cross zigzag wooden plank paths fixed directly into the rock and suspended up to about 80 meters above the ground. Along these narrow corridors, The height and the empty space below become clear with every step. In winter, white snow covers the landscape, making the isolated rock mass stand out even more within the frozen forest. Jinfo Mountain belongs to the South China Karst World Natural Heritage, but its strongest feature lies in terrain cut by giant geological fractures into vertical plateau edges. Because of its table mountain structure, the area has almost no gentle slopes, only cliffs dropping straight into fog-covered valleys. To move around the mountain, visitors must step onto the Juebi Plank Road, a kilometer-long corridor anchored by steel beams drilled directly into the cliff. This walkway hangs at an altitude of about 2,000 meters, placing walkers close to the cold rock face and the deep open void below. From the cliff edge, the mountain surface looks like a smooth basalt cut, falling directly into the abyss. When winter covers the forest with white snow, the suspended planks quickly turn into a slippery surface. Mount Tai confronts climbers with an ancient stone route forced directly up the mountainside through more than 7,000 continuous steps. These sandstone stairs have been worn smooth by millions of footsteps from emperors and pilgrims over many centuries. Higher on the mountain, dense clouds often engulf the summit, erasing the surrounding chasms and leaving only sharp rock pinnacles rising above a white sea of mist. Honored as the foremost of China's 5 great sacred mountains, the mountain is also lined with ancient temple complexes attached to the rocky slopes. The most demanding section contains more than 1,600 steps within less than 1 kilometer, with gradients reaching 70 to 80 degrees. In many places, climbers must grip iron chains with both hands and press tightly against the cliff face to pull themselves upward. Baishishan is famous for a forest of pure white marble peaks rising straight into the sky, creating one of the most unusual geological landscapes in China. On both sides of these mountains are cliff walls that remain almost perfectly parallel before dropping more than 800 meters into the abyss without any buffer below. The fog here does not drift slowly across the peaks, but surges through the sharp rock fractures, capable of hiding the entire landscape within seconds. Baishishan is also known for its cliffside infrastructure, especially the transparent glass bridges drilled directly into the vertical mountain walls. When standing on them, the ground disappears and is replaced by an open drop of nearly 2,000 meters with clouds floating beneath your feet. Only a sheet of glass a few inches thick separates walkers from the abyss below. Mount Mian is one of the few places where deep canyons and massive ancient architectural complexes exist directly on cliff faces. Here, temples are not built on mountaintops, but carved deep into rock recesses, making them appear as if the mountain itself is swallowing them whole. The most remarkable structure is Daluo Palace, a 13-story Taoist complex built along an overhanging cliff face, creating a massive structure in nearly vertical terrain. Exploring the mountain requires moving across uneven rock ledges and outdoor zigzag iron stairways. These walkways have no supporting columns reaching the ground and are anchored directly into the cold cliff surface. On the highest cliffs, local people still preserve the tradition of descending on ropes from the summit to hang bronze bells in dangerous rock crevices as a form of prayer. The Lashan giant Buddha is the largest stone Buddha statue in the world, clinging to the thin boundary between a steep mountain and deep rivers. Standing 71 meters tall, the structure is carved deep into the vertical Lingyun cliff, turning a dangerous natural rock face into a massive spiritual structure. The instep of the Buddha alone is wide enough for 100 people to sit at the same time. The porous and easily weathered Lingyun cliff made carving easier, but it also leaves the entire rock mass exposed to hidden landslide risks. During 90 years of excavation, tens of thousands of tons of fallen rock filled parts of the river confluence below and reduced the violent whirlpools at the foot of the cliff. To reach the statue, visitors must follow a narrow zigzag path carved into the rock face, close to the slippery cliff edge descending toward the river. Gaoyiling stands out with giant red rock ridges, known as the Natural Great Wall, stretching for many miles like a fortress sculpted by nature. From above, the entire rock complex does not have ordinary sharp peaks, but curves and connects like a giant sleeping dragon. The sandstone cliffs here are remarkably smooth, and in some sections there is almost no topsoil or vegetation covering the ridge. Beneath the smooth cliffs is a system of deep and silent lakes, making the height and open space below even more visible. The path along the rock ridge is extremely narrow, where one moment of lost focus, a sudden strong wind, or one slip on the smooth stone surface can put walkers in danger. Would you choose to stand far away and look back, or dare to walk on the back of this dragon? Guoliang Tunnel is always listed among the harshest roads in the world, where even one small steering mistake offers almost no chance to recover. The entire 1.2-kilometer tunnel was hollowed out from inside a 90-degree vertical cliff, forming a rough and dark stone corridor through the mountain. More than 30 openings of different sizes face directly toward the cliff edge, bringing in light while exposing the deep valley outside. Inside the tunnel, some sections suddenly narrow, the rock ceiling drops low, and blind, sharp turns prevent drivers from seeing what lies ahead. At the narrowest section, when two vehicles meet, their wheels must move close to the cliff edge to pass the hidden bend. Guoliang village was once almost isolated until 13 villagers spent 5 years carving this survival route through the cliff by hand. Sangqingshan, located in Jiangxi Province, China, is a World Heritage landscape famous for its forest of sharp granite pillars rising from a sea of clouds. The entire mountain is formed by towering stone spires thrusting upward from mist-filled valleys, resembling a giant, natural field of spikes. The most famous is a cobra-shaped granite pillar, standing 128 meters tall, with sections